Hello everyone, Tactical Glitch here, and today we have a battle replay sent in by Mr. Teufel showcasing a rarely seen vampire leader, the Strigoi Vampire Lord. Same as the other Vampire Lords, he does have the lore of Vampire support, providing healing and the newly updated Gaze of Nagash, but what makes him different is that he doesn't have zombie summons. Instead, it is Command of the Unliving, allows him to summon crypt ghouls or crypt horrors, depending on if you overcast the spell, giving him more powerful summoned units. Unfortunately though, it does come at a cost of more magic and at the same time less uses, so it is not the most meta choice since crypt ghouls and crypt horrors are not that good in the game right now. And nobody really uses the Strigoi Vampire Lord as a result. But still, he is a very powerful duelist with poison, very strong melee attack stats, and on top of that, Opal Amulet and regeneration on top of the hunger to keep himself alive. If you want more damage, there's also Claws of Morcane to provide even more armor-piercing weapon damage. On top of that, he doesn't actually need a dragon mount to be armor-piercing, so there's that. Now, for the rest of the army here, we have some skeleton spears in the front line for Mr. Teufel, backed up by a ton of grave gods. One of them, the Stonesmen, two others, the grave gods with great weapons, providing some very strong anti-infantry presence to deal with perhaps the death gods of the Vampire Coast. Behind them, two more units of crypt horrors for more armor piercing and some monstrous infantry mass. And on the far corners of the battlefield, two units of fell bats. Hidden in the bushes, we have some direwolves here, one of them the anti-large dire pack. Supporting the army in terms of just pure passive healing, we have the Necromancer on an Unholy Lodestone Corpse card. Other than this passive healing aura, he also has the Master of the Dead, which charges up as soon as units start dying around the vampire hero. Now on the other side of the battlefield, the Vampirates, we have a front line of pistol mobs here, backed up by even more pistol mobs, and on the side, a couple death gods for more elite melee presence, especially good at cutting through tons of vampire count chaff. Behind them, the bomber mobs and a couple handgun mobs, one of them the black spots with anti-large. On the flanks, a ton of animated hulks, four of them. In fact, that's probably the max you can bring on the battlefield, as they are a very cost-efficient monstrous infantry with armor piercing. Speaking of monsters, you can't miss out on the Lamprey's Revenge, one of the best, if not the best, defensive monsters in the game, providing a very solid backbone for the Vampirate army. They are supported by a couple pistol mobs and a couple scurvy dogs for some added mobility and skirmishing firepower. For the leadership, it's actually not Noctilus, so both sides are not bringing the Meta Lords today. Vampire Fleet Admiral with pole arms coming in with the lore of Deep Magic. This lore of magic might not have healing like the lore of vampires, but it does have some interesting spells. The crab summons Denizens of the Deep and Vangai's Revenge, a very powerful spell but with a very long casting time and insane magic cost. That's it for the army builds. Now let's get the battle started. Having the gun bats on their side means that the vampires can move up their skirmishing firepower and start poking at these unarmored vampire count targets. Especially the fellbats are not in the position to screen away these skirmishing firepower. They do have to be careful though, because the fellbats are significantly faster than them at 110 speed, one of the fastest units in the game, while the deck droppers being regular fellbats carrying an additional zombie. They're at only 80 speed, so they will be caught up by the fellbats rather easily, and they need to return to the fire support of the pistol mobs, providing that anti-air protection before they get caught in melee by the fellbats. Now in the front line, skeleton spears pushing up, braving the pistol shots, but also getting charged by the death gods. On the other side, the death guards are also moving in, cleaving apart the skeleton infantry chaff, while the skeleton spears in the middle are getting absolutely blasted by the bomber mobs. The Strigoi Vampire Lord will be responding with a crypt ghoul summon, forcing the bomber mob to pull back, while the Lamprey's Revenge pushing in, plugging the gap in the defenses, and the fellbats here catching up with the deck droppers will be forcing them to pull back, dropping onto the ground and screen away using the help of the zombie pirate gunnery mobs. On the flank, there are direwolves slipping through the gaps here, but here comes the animated hulks charging in, while the Vampire Fleet Admiral getting a little too deep into melee here, no pun intended, getting stuck in a fight against the Strigoi Vampire Lord. He's not doing much damage to the Strigoi, while he himself is taking a walloping, especially with the Claws of Morcane buffing up the melee damage of the Strigoi Vampire Lord. He did use some magic support, Vangai's Revenge bombarding the Count's front line. But very nice reaction from the Vampire Count player, Stonesman being pulled back, avoiding the brunt of the damage. The regular Grave Gods also shifted their formation a bit, avoiding their fate from being completely obliterated. Unfortunately for the Admiral, the Vangai's Revenge used up a lot of magic and he no longer has enough to summon crabs to bail himself out. And this might spell the end of the Vampire Fleet Admiral, as the Necromancer is boosting the melee stats of the Strigoi Vampire Lord up to 80, plus the poison debuffing the speed and melee damage of the Vampire Fleet Admiral. He is stuck in the melee and getting absolutely sniped out. And perhaps the finishing blow came from the Necromancer, which is rather ironic when you think about it. Dire Wolves and Dire Packs are holding back on the far side there, just dragging away some of the Vampire Red attention, while the front line of the Vampire counts are making some decent headway here, grinding through a ton of the pistol mob, while the Grave Gods with great weapons, having the armor piercing and anti-infantry bonus, should be able to put a dent in the HP on the Death Gods. Handguns are still holding back though, and they are now shooting at the Necromancer. The gun bats are also staying in the sky now that the fell bats are all dead, so they are free to just poke away at the Necromancer. The problem is that they don't have any leadership now that the Vampire Fleet Admiral is dead to keep them in the fight. Beneath them, the bomber mobs are being hunted down by the Crypt Ghouls. Black Spots, positioning rather far away from the front line, doesn't have that kind of concern. Continues to fire away at the Necromancer, but the Necromancer has quite a bit of healing right now, as he does have the Master of the Dead activated and the regeneration from the Corpse God, and of course Unholy Lodestone adding even more healing. The Master of the Dead ability isn't fully activated, but that's still around 10 HP of healing per second. The area of effect healing auras also apply to the Crypt Horrors, having their own regeneration as well. And then there's the Strigoi Vampire Lord, just like all other Vampire Lords, having the hunger on top of all the other passive heals. And yeah, there's not much that can really harm him right now, other than the shotgun shots from the Lamprey's Revenge, but the Lamprey's Revenge themselves are being overwhelmed by the count unit here. So much armor piercing in the vicinity, the Crypt Horrors are beating them up, while the Dark Packs are swarming them with that anti-large attack. With their Lord dead and unable to turn the fight around, their bodies crumble alongside their leadership. The Vampires lost a very important anchor on their front line, and the Dire Wolves are freed up. Now they're slipping through the defenses of the count here. Animated Hulks try to intercept, but alas, that was futile, as the Dire Packs managed to catch up to the Black Spots. Black Spots try to pull back, but that allowed the Dire Pack to utilize their new pursuit behavior, each of them seeking their own target to chase after. As you can see, it is doing so much damage and chewing through the HP of the Black Spots. So the Black Spots are probably not going to be long for this world. As for the infantry fight though, the Death Gods are holding strong, cutting through all those Grave Gods with their hunger regenerating their HP, and of course their frenzy providing additional melee attack stats. The Grave God with great weapons might have anti-infantry bonus and armor piercing, but that is just no match against this Vampire Red Elite Infantry. More Death Gods are coming back from the far side of the battlefield now, reinforcing this fight against the Crypt Horrors and the Strigoi Vampire Lord. On the far side there, Sternsmen chasing off the handgunners. Now the handgun zombies are trying to turn around and fire in point blank, but that is not gonna work, as the Sternsmen do have shield and they have regeneration healing back their HP. So the Sternsmen going in with that anti-infantry bonus are gonna quickly finish up the handgun mobs. Back to the main fight in the middle, the Death Gods actually ground down most of the count units, leaving only the characters. The Strigoi Vampire Lord is holding strong for now, using the Opal Amulet boosting his tanky status, while the Necromancer also providing additional healing and melee stats. Now, I do believe the Master of the Dead is fully activated. Indeed it is, providing that maximum 0.3%, oh no, 0.4% regeneration for the Strigoi Vampire Lord now. That's because the recent cast of the Gaze of Nagash from the Strigoi Vampire Lord, activating the Lore of Vampire passive, adding another 0.05% healing per second, allowing the Strigoi Vampire Lord to out-heal the damage from the Death Gods. But in the end, the Death Gods managed to finish off the Necromancer, while the Strigoi Vampire Lord is left alone among a bunch of anti-infantry units. Now, the Strigoi Vampire Lord might be a Strigoi and almost similar to a Crypt Horror, but he himself is still an infantry-sized model, slightly bigger than regular infantry but still smaller than actual monsters like the animated Hulks. He's still very tanky with a bunch of healing, but it is unwise to fight in the middle of a bunch of anti-infantry Death Gods. Returning to the embrace of the Sternsmen, now he has a bit more of a chance fighting against the Death Gods, and the balance of power is overwhelmingly in favor of the Vampire counts at this point. The Death Gods might be healing themselves with the hunger, but the Sternsmen and the Strigoi Vampire Lord are also self-regenerating. It is elite infantry versus elite infantry, though the counts do have their lord on their side. The Death Gods got poisoned by the Strigoi, while the Strigoi himself is getting heals from his passive abilities. On top of that, Invocation of Nahak on the Sternsman to heal them even more, and the Death Gods simply can't catch up with all the heals from the Count's side. Balance of power was decidedly in favor of the Count, and that shall be the victory of the Strigoi Vampire Lord. GG to both players, and big thanks to Mr. Teufel for sending in the replay. For the Vampire Count army performances, the Grave Gods with great weapons, while still being anti-infantry and armor-piercing, they were just fighting against superior infantry, the Death Gods and the animated Hulk, so unfortunately not quite able to earn their own value. The rest of the Vampire Count army also didn't do great other than the Dire Pack, who managed to chew through a bunch of expensive black spots, some animated Hulks, and also help overwhelming the Lamprey's Revenge, but the rest of the army is just Vampire Count chaff, so not much to say about them. Really, it came down to the Strigoi Vampire Lord slapping the Vampire Fleet Admiral in the early game, and then the Sternsmen sustaining their own HP with their regenerative trait, allowing the Strigoi Vampire Lord in the late game to fight with infantry support, and in the end, grinding down the Vampire Coast army. The Vampire Coast army losing the caster early game is very painful due to the lack of spell support in the late game, and then the Death Gods did some really good work here, but unfortunately just not quite able to outgrind the Vampire Counts due to their lack of leadership support. The Lamprey's Revenge got overwhelmed early and they died way too soon, unable to recover their value even with the armor and regeneration. The Black Spots did really well here, but unfortunately got caught by the Dire Pack and was chewed up by the Vampire Count's doggos. The rest of the army not doing too great here. Animated Hulks did alright, but the rest of the Vampire chaff, especially the pistol mobs, was not able to recover their own value. The deck droppers got pressured by the Felbet and was unable to skirmish freely. And yeah, that's it for today's battle. I hope you all enjoyed this multiplayer action. If you want to see more Total War Warhammer multiplayer content, be sure to subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Tactical Lich, signing out.